Should we start or just wait for about a minute, maybe?
I think that we
I
should
think we
start
should start, yeah,
yeah.
because there's a content that I need to cover, and it will take full time. So I do want to start on time.
Okay. All righty. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and assalamu alaikum to everyone. And thank you again for joining yet another in the series of the Merit Healthcare Research Innovation Landscape in Pakistan webinars. And today we are fortunate and delighted to have Dr. Junaid Bhatti joining us. He's a senior data scientist in Canada. He has a PhD in trained medical epidemiologist, and he's currently working as a senior data scientist focusing on healthcare analytics and medical underwriting and digital insurance solutions at one of the largest financial institutions in Canada. And before doing that, he was in academic positions at McGill and University of Toronto, and he actively volunteers to manage post-secondary education for the Canadian College of Healthcare and Pharmaceutics. And he has published more than 60 peer-reviewed publications and multiple reputable journals such as JAMA and Lancet. So with that, it's my distinct honor and pleasure to welcome Dr. Junaid Bhatti. So Junaid, please take it away.
Thank you so much for the introduction. It's again an honor and privilege to be speaking at this forum. I believe over the years that I've been part of this forum, as well as the Merit Research Committee, we have seen that this forum has really moved a lot of things here in US and in Canada, as well as back home in terms of education. And we have a very distinguished panel here who has done a lot in terms of bringing these skill sets to the medical colleges, medical students directly, as well as our residents and fellow back home in Pakistan. And the reason that I'm really motivated to do this is because the audience of this is so broad, and even if you get this thing recorded, it can be used afterwards. And that is my motivation for this talk, which is manuscript writing for clinical research. And I've developed this task not for this distinguished panel, it's rather for medical students, as well as people who are just initiating their clinical research career as part of medicine. It's important for them to just see, okay, how we can start doing something if we have some data available. So that's my main goal, to touch those people and make this video accessible, or make this video of this presentation accessible to them, so that if they are able to review this for 1 hour, they're able to start somewhere. They don't have to wait for anything. So that is my main goal. Again, I hope that everything will be properly sort of appearing on screens as am I sharing. But like as I said, there are lots of videos in it, and I try to break this writing of a clinical research manuscript in few sections. I'll start by introduction. An introduction, what I will try to do is to show you how you can set up your screen, and in a way that I said that I will be trying to see that this video serves the purpose of being a remote workshop, in which I'm not there, but at least it's expected to live out this specific webinar, and if it can be accessible to them. Secondly, then whenever we want to write a clinical research paper, we need to set up the Word document so that it can be used for that purpose. So we have to do some specific things or tasks when we are setting that Word document to write something up. Even if we want to write a cover letter, we need to set it up in that way. Third is that I will then dive deep into manuscript sections, that how the manuscript is generally divided. And then I'll go through one of those sections and explain what may or may not be included there. References is also covered with the manuscript sections, but I will sort of spend a little bit more time with an additional video on Vancouver and APA style. Normally people who have done the fellowship, FCPS, they have gone through these things because they have to write a thesis. But when you're a medical student or just starting as a very early person doing a master's, you have not gone through that. Then I'll spend time on how to properly draft a table and figure. Then I'll speak a little bit about Equator network guidelines. I don't want to speak too much at this point because it will sort of make sense at that point, and then I'll summarize. So a little bit about myself. So I started my medical career by completing an MBBS back in 2003, followed by a master's and PhD in public health and epidemiology. And then I completed a postdoc at McGill University in mental health sciences, specifically with the Department of Psychiatry. Then I joined the University of Toronto as a scientist in the Department of Surgery, but more focusing on trauma and critical care. And then at that same time, I indulged myself into how we can bring a lot of education or skills training to post-secondary students. And then that's what one of the things that was mentioned in my introduction, that I'm part as a volunteer board of director for a post-secondary education institution here. And what we do and cater is mostly people who are initiating their career in health sciences. And that's where I think this clinical research skill is also very important. About 3 years ago, I had a chance to become a senior data scientist at a financial institution in their relatively newer department called Advanced Analytics, and that has helped me to learn new skills. The point of this infographic, you can say, is to tell you that you can start research even if you're 60 years old or 65 years old. There are lots of things that you can do. There are lots of career transitions that I've gone through during my career, and almost every 5 years, 6 years, I am doing those transitions. So I like to call myself PhD trained medical epidemiologist, but my job is very variable. Like, I am doing different things in a single day. And for this presentation, I can say that I have more than 62 index publications, so that gives me a little bit of license to speak to you and to give you some of the hints that or tips that I've gained through. One thing is very interesting that I would like to mention is that nobody taught me how to write a research paper in any of the training that I received. Whether it's MSc or PhD. Yes, they said, okay, this is how you can write it, but like when you want to start a write paper, nobody teaches you how to do that. So it's really those small things that come together and get to that point. And that brings to my next slide, which is when we talk about research paper, writing a research paper, I would like to quote Ray Lewis. He's I believe a football player in the US, but what he said is very interesting. So greatness is a lot of small things done well stack up on each other, and that is a true statement that really applies when we write a paper, because there are very small things that you need to do when you're writing a paper that makes your paper great and stand out. And journals, especially the editors at this point, were very experienced and seasoned. They're looking for those small things to be done right, things that do not bother them in writing, on reading the papers, makes them more engaging. That really helps you to get your message through and also get an acceptance, or at least a review, earn a review from them at the level of that. If you're writing a case report, does not matter whatever you're writing. If you take care of those small things, it really adds up and helps you to move forward. So with this, I know that I'm going a little bit fast, but there's a reason, because I do need to cover a lot of content in this presentation. So I do have something to share. So every good study starts with a data, like you have to have a data available. So I'm just posting a link here. It's a survey. I believe that you should be accessible to you. It should open up a window on the side. Just gonna remove this. So it should open a window like this that you have in this format, so you can provide your. So I don't want any personal information, mail or no personal identifiable information. So I think that should be fine. So if you start responding to this question, it will really help me. Let me know if you have access to this thing. I will see that how many people are engaging with this talk as well in a live way, because I will know the responses. So if you can respond quickly to this question, then I will start seeing the responses here. I'm waiting for your responses. Okay, so I'll give 1 minute at least at this point, because every study starts with the data. So if you have a data, and that's what you will see when I'm going through the table and figures, that I have mimicked the similar data that is collected from here. So you can create these Microsoft forms, you can share a link and start collecting the data. Most of these tools are now online available where you can start collecting this data. Okay. So you can see that your data is now sort of going into this format in which we are not only seeing how much data is being collected, but then we can see the distribution of people who are responding to this question. So I think that is what I wanted to achieve is this engagement, that how many people are part of this response. So this is how you're going to collect your data. Now we'll try to figure out how to put this data into a research paper. Thank you so much for your response. I'm really happy. So the next step for this whole thing is to set up your computer so that you can learn, you can see what I'm doing here, and then you can practice it on your own computer. So unfortunately, many people do not have a Mac. So I have a Mac, but what you can do here is that you can set up this Zoom recording or YouTube video on one side, like what I'm doing, and then on the other side, you can set up your Word document like this. So what I'm going to do here is that I will have these two side by side. So it will help you. You should have side by side, but I will just maximize my screen for this Word document so that we can start working on it. Okay. So this brings me to the next slide. Okay, so the next slide is setting up a Word document. So it's a longer video. It's approximately 10 minutes, I believe. So we will be doing a number of things here. So and I'll be commenting on what's being done here. So first thing is I have maximized my screen. So whenever you open a document, the first thing that you need to do is to go on this style section here and click on no spacing. So no spacing does what it does is that it creates 0 line space between 2 lines. So like you have to start from there. Then what you can do here is that what I'm doing here is that I'm changing the font to Times New Roman. Times New Roman 12 or Arial 11 are the two standard formats that are being used. The next thing that I'm writing for a manuscript is that I've written the line for title of the manuscript. So that basically is it's telling that what is the title of the manuscript. So you write your title of the manuscript that you're trying to write. The second thing is authors' names. So what you have like 1, 2, or 3, or how many authors you have. So you start typing them up here on this first cover page. And what you do here is that you now increase the interline space to 2.0. And the reason for that is many editors would like you to submit papers that has an interline space of 2, because then when they print it, it's easier for the reviewer to read if they want to print it, and they can also insert their comments there. Afterwards, you have to write the affiliations for these authors. So if you have used 1, 2, 3 as numerical for the author names, then in this case, you can use ABC just to distinguish from the other one, because then you can use these ABCs in front of the author names to basically tell that from which affiliation that author is. And this afterwards, what you can do is that you have the section on correspondence. So here I'm just going to put some fictive names as authors. So you can write your own name here. Obviously, degrees would also go afterwards, that what that person's degree is. So this is one person's name, and then there's another person's name that I'm going to type here. Along with the degrees. As I was doing this, I was recording, was just thinking also. So there are some places where I'm going to be a little bit slow, but I'll try to catch up and also explain what's being done here. Again, you try to write all degrees that this person has. Typically, it's required. And since we have the affiliation section below, it will give them the which degree, because sometimes some authors are part of more than one organization. For example, a person can be part of Johns Hopkins or Khan University or University of Toronto and some Pakistani university. So they can then add it. And when you have these affiliations, you can just put them in front of those names as supertext. So you can utilize that, but it allows you to have this, at least on the cover page, 3 different sections. So you can see that I'm writing the affiliations for the second author, or technically second author, and then I'm writing also the affiliations for the third author. Now, when you're writing the affiliation, it's also important to write the name of the city and name of the country. And if they are part of US, you also have to write the name of the state, abbreviations of the state, like if Johns Hopkins University is in Maryland, so you have to write MD in front of it. And do not forget to also write the postal code of that area. So these are important considerations, and because these are also you will need when you're typing in your information into the portal when you're submitting your paper. So you have to have all of this information available for these papers. Most of the web portals where you're submitting paper, they're either US based or European based, so they are going to look for whether the proper things, especially these postal codes, have been added onto this or not. So I'm just looking here in terms of like where this medicine. So I'm just trying to figure out if I can find the right postal code for Johns Hopkins University. And maybe I've not found it, but like it will go with five or six letters that goes with the US typically postal code, and then I have the postal code for the UK. Okay. So I'm just typing it the 7-digit postal code. Then in correspondence section, what you're going to write is that normally the first author is also the corresponding author. Sometimes the last author is, so whoever it is. So you have to write their name. You have to write their title within the place that they're connecting from, associate professor or so. And then I'm putting it Rawalpindi Medical University because that's where I did complete my MBBS. So it's giving them a little bit acknowledgement here. And then you have to give street address to the extent that if the mail is being sent to you, it should reach you. I know that in Pakistan, many institutions do not have a proper street address, but at least if the institution is big enough, it should be able to reach you. And then you also have to write here the telephone and email of that person. Fax can also be added if you have access to fax. Not everyone has access to fax, but typically in Canada and US, they have each department has access to a fax, so it can also be added at this stage. So that would sort of like complete the cover page for this document. And here we have set up the whole Word document, starting by first of all changing the style to no spacing, modifying the Times New Roman 12, as well as keeping the interline as 2. Now there are some small things that I'm doing here is that I'm making these headings bold. So it allows a person when they're going through is to go through quickly. Sometimes it's a good thing to just uppercase the title of the manuscript so it's easier to read. And some authors in the recent times have also used to add a running title to their manuscript. So it makes things easier for them to read through. Okay, so that is about it for this section where we are setting up the Word document for writing a manuscript. So now we move on to the next one, which is the sections of the paper. So I'm just again going to play the video, and then you will see that how we are going to be, so I'll commenting it that what's being done there. So now I've moved on to the second page, and normally on the second page, there is an abstract. There can be other sections that can be asked like competing interests, but a typical document would have abstract, introduction, methods, results, discussion, and then references, and sometimes the tables and figures towards the end of the document. Tables and figures can sometimes be part of the results, but it's usually better to have them at the end, because if figures are sometimes some journals want them to be posted or take the files as JPEG document. So what I've done here is that I've made all those headings as uppercase, so it's easier for us to look for those headings when we are going through different documentation. So I'm just making them uppercase as well as making them bold as I'm going along here. Okay. So now what I'm doing here is that I am moving each one of them to the next page. I'm using Control Enter or Command Enter for Mac users. So basically, it basically introduces a page break in each of those ones. So I don't have to do. Some people try to do a multiple enter. So it's better to page enter, meaning that you move to the next page through that. Now what I'm doing here is that I'm also inserting the page numbers, and one trick that I like is that either the page number is centralized so everyone can read it. Any document that you do, whether it's cover letter or anything, if it goes beyond one page, you should add a page number. And what I like in terms of page number is that, this is my personal preference, is that if I have a document, I'll usually put a page number of this format, page one of 2 or one of 6. So it gives the people idea that on which page that document is. And sometimes some people miss the pages if they're printing, so they at least know which page is missing from them. So it's easier to read. So now you can see in the document is that I have my major sections of the research manuscript well sort of defined. Now abstract, in the abstract, there are 4 subheadings. The first is usually objective, method. So it's not introduction, usually objectives, because you have abstract, you only have like 250 words or so. So you have to be very precise in that. And so you have objective, methods, results, conclusion, and then keywords is the next heading that you put. And then obviously you have to conclude, bring your paper in a way that it sort of bring everything together. Okay. Now, introduction section is usually, it starts with a very broader concept. So right now, I asked you here is to provide me your responses that whether you like or to recommend Merit webinar to your friend or colleague. So if I go back here, so typical introduction is 3 to 4 paragraphs. It starts with very very broader. So you can say that, okay, I would like to I would like to know more about, or like Merit has been there for so long. So what can be written there? Then the starts as I'm trying to it starts with introduction about the whole. I'm just waiting for the text to appear so that it's easier for us to follow. Then once you have the introduction, like Merit has been there for so long, so you can give like few lines on that. Then you can get into why you want to conduct a study. It may be just to know whether the Merit has any impact at all on different people or not. And normally the last paragraph is about articulating the objectives of the study. So it's 3 to 4 paragraphs. And I'm just giving here example that we can start by saying introduction to Merit. This is committee. We can provide in terms of specific Merit's prior workshops and webinars. So you can give a detail that how many workshops have been done. And now you have to give a rationale why you want to do this study, because you want to know the Merit has any impact or not. And so this survey is a way to measure it. So I'm just giving you an idea of how you can do any type of study based on this. Develop a form, and then once you have the form and results in front of you, how you can start writing the stuff on it. So I'm just giving a more description that you can be very specific when you're typing the objectives. Now, in terms of methods, so method typically starts with study designs and study settings. So you have to, I'm just unbolding it because the methods was bold. So I'm just trying to unbold it here. Start with study designs and settings, main settings. If I'm doing it in Pakistan or whoever my setting is, maybe the Merit committee, Merit audience, which can be medical students. So I can give an idea that this is an online survey. So I can start writing through that. So for example, I'm just giving it is that we conducted a cross-sectional study design. Since the objective of this talk is not to get into the designs, rather how you start writing a manuscript. So I'm not going to get into too much details of the epidemiology or study designs itself, but rather we can say that we use a cross-sectional study design to assess Merit committee members. So all of that information can be quickly written in the first paragraph. And then you can give more details on study designs, study settings, who were your participants in the study. And when I'm going to go back to the Equator guidelines, I'll get into a little bit of details of that which are the subsections that you can put it in under the methods, because there's already so much information available out there that you can use to develop on your work. Okay. Then we have those other sections.
Dr. Bhatti, can we move to slideshow, please? Because that will be increase the visibility, please. Please check
Okay,
if you can do that. I'll
I
appreciate that.
try. So it's going to be slightly better,
Yeah,
but
it's
not
better.
a lot.
That's better.
So we were. So in the results section, so now the next section is results section. I'm just going to go back once. So in the method section, you will have study subsections such as study design and settings, study participants, measures or data collection method, for example, MS Forms, that you use the Microsoft Forms to collect information. Sometimes you include the sample size and also the statistical analysis that provides a brief description of the type of analysis. I know that it's a little bit smaller that you're seeing, but when you will be watching it afterwards, you will have the ability to make it bigger. So in the results section, they usually start with a description of the study. So you give a description which descriptive results. First, basically, you tell that how many participants are there. For example, I'm just going to give you the examples of how this can be written. So we have had, let's say we have 20 participants or 30 participants who have responded. Who regularly attend the merit workshops. So that basically constitutes your whole population. You are sent this questionnaire. I'm just telling you that how this could be written. So this is just an example of them. So you can give the numbers and then you can give a percentage in under brackets. Responded to questions. So maybe out of 100 people, 10 people or 20 people have responded. So that will be result in 20% or 20 people responded. So just give you an idea. Of them, XX percentage were male. Again, it refers to the percentage that you can use here. So you can take these numbers, take these proportions, you can write about them. So you have the tables, you have the results, but also you have to describe those results. In the results section, it really starts with the descriptive results, and then it goes into details if you're performing any inferential analysis or others. So that will be described later. So so we talked about here is the net promoter score, which is also being calculated here, 39, for example. So it gives you an idea of how people are likely to recommend a merit webinar to someone else. Green is saying that it's a good thing. So I'm just letting the organizers know that it's a good thing that they have a 39 score. Usually it's between 20 or 20 to 30. So for any services that you offer in the US and Canada. So most of the service providers are looking to increase that to a certain point. So it's a good thing. Anyways, I'm just trying to explain here that how the results would appear. If there is a quantitative variable, then you can give an average, and then you can provide the standard deviation. Then basically you have a space for table or figures. Typically what happens is that you will say that insert table 1 here or figure 1 here, and then you provide those table and figures afterwards in your manuscript. Okay. So now I'm going to move on to the discussion section. So discussion section usually starts with summarize the main results. So you basically provide them that how many people were participating, and then you basically go forward. I'm just going to So it's end with the conclusion. So I'm just going to stop here. So basically you summarize the most important results. The merit lectures have for example, the merit lectures have a very high impact. You make reference to the prior work. So for example, a similar study has been done and showed that similar initiatives have been done in the past, and discuss the limitations of that study, whether it's a cross-section study. So it just gives a one-point view on the paper, and then you finish with the conclusion. The next section that we are dealing here is the references. So basically introduction is 1 to 1.5 page. Methods is between 2 and 2.5 pages, and then you have this result section, which is around um, two uh, 2 pages, and then discussion section is again 2 to 2.5 pages. Overall, you're expected to have around um, between 1.5 pages of introduction, 2 pages of methods, and then 2.5 pages for methods. So approximately 8 to 10 pages are enough for you to cover the whole manuscript. So it's approximately 2,000 words that you are able to do within 8 pages. Approximately 250 words with double interline, you should be able to have it on 1 page. Now, here you have in the references, you have to choose either the Vancouver reference or APA style references. So it's important to know that these styles, I'm just going to give you a little bit of a window here, is that normally we choose Vancouver styles because that is mostly medical journals are preferring. APA style has been used typically for psychological journals. It's relatively not used in medical journals these days, or if a new journal is coming up. So you will end up using the Vancouver style. So Vancouver style has a very specific um, shape. So I'm just going to stop here just to show you how the shape looks like. So it basically has the author name's last name, then the first initial, and then going on, then the title of the manuscript, the name of the journal, year it's published, then the volume number, issue, and then there's a colon, and then 1 to 10. So semicolon is between the year and volume and issue, and then colon is between the volume and issue and the page numbers. So this is just an example. I'm just going to come back to this in the next few slides as well. Okay. So this is again an example of how the Vancouver style and APA style are different. So this is a paper that has the Vancouver type style. So in the Vancouver style, what you have here is that you have the numbering in the research manuscript. So you can see here is that for each reference is numbered in numerical order. And then for each reference, if you go towards the end of the paper, so you will see that you have the author names here in the form of like you have the last name, then first initial, then there's a comma, and then you move on to the next author, then there is a space, and then there's a comma, and then you write the full name of the title. So there's also et al. If you have 3 or more authors. In this case, they have put it normally, the conventional Vancouver style dictates that you need to have 6 authors. So you have the name of the, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna stop here. So you have the name of the journal, then year, then there's a semicolon, the volume, and then colon, and then 15, which is the page number. So you have that in all of those Vancouver style journals. Now this is an example of APA style journal, APA style, in which you usually have the name of the author mentioned instead of the numbers in the main manuscript. So you can see that when there are 2 authors, so normally they can put an and put 2 or 3 authors, then they can put them together in it, and sometimes they use et al. This talk would not be enough to get into those details, but you can see here is that in references, instead of numerical order in which they appear, so all of these author names are listed as alphabetical order based on the last name of the first author. So you can see here is that normally the last name of the first author will come up, and then there's an alphabetical order. Then it will followed by a column. Then there's an initial, and each initial is followed by a period. There is an year that is mentioned. So then there is an year that is mentioned here, the name of the manuscript, the study title, and then the names of journal. Then there's a volume which is separated by a comma, and then there's a page number. So this is how the APA style would exhibit. So you'll have to follow the general guidelines when you're dealing with the different, when you want to publish. And if a journal accepts APA style, then you have to move to the APA style. But as I said in the previous examples, most journals these days, especially in the medical sciences or biomedical sciences, they are looking for Vancouver style. So now I'm going to move on to the next one. I believe it's one of the most important one that I will be doing today is, so tables and figures need to follow a certain pattern. And I know that the time is going to run short, but I will try to at least do this one tables properly. So each table has a title on the top, and then there are three borders that you need to properly define. For example, in the example, the data that we are collecting, I chose to have this data presented in the following way, in this following table, which is going to appear. So first thing that I'm going to do is that I'll go back and change the style of the table to no spacing. So it reduces the space between the two rows. And I'm going to add more lines to represent the data that I'm going to enter, which will be entered shortly, you will see. So the first variable that we were looking in our research study, which we just did here, is that male and female. Obviously, these numbers are from the current. So I will just be putting the sex, age, and the last is net promoter score, which will be indicating these promoters, passives, and detractors. So you can see here is that I am creating space for the categories that can be added afterwards. So important thing here is that each of the values, if you're entering a number or a percentage, I have seen in many papers that people tend to enter them in one cell. So you have to make sure that each value that you're entering goes into a separate cell. Because when you're printing a document, when it goes from one computer to the other, if you're sending over email or other methods, it can jumble up. So the only way that you can prevent that if you're using a table format in Microsoft Word is to choose a separate cell for each value that you're entering. For example, sex, male, female, or man, woman. We also had another one which was prefer not to say. So I'm just going to create a category for that. And then in age group, we had 18 to 35 years. Then 36 to 55 years. Then we have detractor, passives. So these are all the different categories that exist out there. Now I'm just going to delete the last line and now enter the fictitious values because I didn't have a choice then. So I'm just going to enter, first of all, the table title. So it goes on top. I'm just going to type in a title just as a placeholder. It's attempting to be accurate, but its goal is to show that how this would appear. I know that I have lots of comments appearing. I don't know what they're saying, but let's see if I'm able to finish and give those responses. So now you can see that I put here numbers and percentage. So if I'm doing the number in percentages, they need to go to separate cells so I have enough space available. One thing I usually do is that I left indent them, and then I use this this method to basically move them towards the center of that row, which allows me to make sure that each number ends at the same place. I'll be able to show you in just a while, in just a minute. Okay. So next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to go and remove all the table borders. So as I said that in table, it's important to have the top and then three borders. So I will just have the top border, which is here. Then I have a middle border, which is between the first part of the identifying those columns that what I want to write in them. And then the last border will come underneath the table. So you can see that from the previous, it's easier to read. And I'm just going to enter some numbers here just to for the purpose of how the table would be appearing. So 10, let's say we have a sample of 20 people. Then I'm just going to add some numbers here to make it consistent with what was entered before. So I'm just giving the percentages here so that it can fit in. So important thing here is, again, each value goes in separate cells, and then you have different ways of like sort of making sure that everything is aligned. So now you can see that when I use this this section to move the column typing towards the left side, so it allows it to be aligned with this in a way that 0 is appearing underneath. So you have to make sure that last digit is appearing in the same line. So there are techniques around it. Again, we don't have too much time to get into the details, but the goal here is to sort of show you that how we can do this. Now, what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to insert a chart, and with the figures, I will. What I'm going to do here is that I'm going to a little bit skip forward, is to show you how the figure should look like. In the end, the figure needs to have their title written towards the bottom. Some figures definitely with the Microsoft Excel, you do see that some titles are appearing on the top, but typically in the journals you're required to have that, or it's expected that you write the titles towards the bottom or present them separately. They need to have the access titles, if there is a NEN number here and gender number here, so it should appear in that order. I know that I'm doing it a bit quickly because I do want to finish on time. So I'm just going to skip over it, but there are certain norms that you need to follow with tables, and figure tables are very important in terms of having the top, middle, and bottom border. I'm just going to move to the next slide. Now, I do want to take some time to speak about the Equator guidelines. These guidelines are created by international bodies and international body of scientists together. What it does is that it gives that what are the headings and subheadings that you need to have a paper if you're writing a specific paper. If you're writing a randomized trial, if you're writing a case control study, a cross-sectional study, there are specific guidelines. For systematic review, study protocol, diagnostic study, each one of those guidelines are here, and their website is equator-network.org. So you can basically select, for example, if you are writing a randomized trial, so you'll be able to select the consort guideline which are mentioned here. So this allows you to know which headings are required, and journals are following these guidelines since they have been created. So there, for example, for consort guidelines, there's a checklist that I'm just going to show you in a while, and also there's a flow diagram. If you're writing a randomized control trial or typing it, you need to have a proper trial type written in a way that all the headings and subheadings are included in that one. So for example, these are consort guidelines headings, and you can see that they want you to have a title and abstract, and in the title, it should be identified as a randomized control trial, what should be written in their introduction, what should be written in their methods like trial design, participants, interventions. So these are the same things that we just discussed when I was going through the methods section, but it gives you an idea of if you're writing a randomized control trial, what needs to be written, and then they provide. And journals sometimes want you to go back and check that whether you are able to complete that properly or not, or whether you have entered that information or not. So I'm just going to also show you the figure. So some guidelines also include the figure, the specific figure that needs to be drafted. For example, if you are doing a randomized control trial, you need to show that, okay, how many people were assessed, how many people were randomized to which of those arms, and if there anything happening. So there's lots of information already available in the Equator network, so you don't have to spend too much time. In our case scenario, since we did a cross-sectional study, so for the cross-sectional study, they have a also have a checklist. So you can see that in the introduction, they request you to have background or rationale, study objectives being presented. In the title, they want you to identify the study as a cross-sectional study design. So that will be there. In the method section, they have study design, settings, participants, variables, data sources, study size, quantitative variables, statistical methods, results, talk about participants, descriptive data, outcome data, main results, and other analysis. Discussion has key results, limitation, interpretation, generalizability, and funding. So obviously, funding is there, but it's requested as a separate section, but main article is already covered there. Okay, so again, I'm showing you where it's gonna show up as Equator Network. So it's equator-network.org. So moving on to the next slide. So in summary, so important thing that what we covered is that how we can properly set up our Word document in terms of style. So if you start with style, properly choose the font that we want to use properly, choose the interline space that we need, and headings of the research manuscript. So you start, as I showed you, cover page very quickly. But if you are starting a research paper, if you already have the results, you can just quickly use them and put them how the paper would look like. Then spend time on review Equator guideline. I know that I've covered in the past 5-6 minutes quickly, but it gives you an idea. You know what you study you're doing, cross-sectional case control. So you can just use and Equator guidelines and put those subheadings. Some may apply, some may not apply, but at least it will give you an idea of how to quickly get there. And then follow general guidelines, how many word count they need in the abstract, in the research paper. So you'll have to follow them in terms of tables and figure what they need, so you can just quickly get them and do them. Again, greatness is a lot of small things done well. So I've shown you very small things. So you have to do these things properly so that you get to the next level in terms of having your paper done in a way. Obviously, writing styles will be different. English is not our first language, but having a paper written properly, there are no typos and other things that really helps someone to get to the review stage quickly. So I'll stop here, Dr. Uzair, and then give you the floor to bombard me with the questions or tell me that how bad I was.
Thank you, Junaid. Thank you so much for doing this. This was excellent presentation and very useful. Dr. Uzair and Cromer, you're here. I think they're like the chat boxes being bombarded with questions. So maybe Dr. Uzair, if you want to start out, and perhaps there are some questions that we can pose to Junaid.
Thank you, Sir Faraz. So I think just to save the time, because there are so many questions, so Junaid, you can take straight the question from the question answer window and start responding to it so that we can save some time.
Yeah, I'm just gonna. Okay. So I'm just gonna go up.
Yeah, Dr. Sarwat, you have something to say?
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. First of all, congratulations on a very, very wholesome presentation. And I just wanted to let you know that I run a journal, and I can talk from the point of view of the editor based on what was just said. And I think this will be relevant. And I think everything was said was perfectly on the spot. And, you know, little things done well make it great. But in my experience, all the papers that we receive from the non-English speaking world have the reason they are rejected, even if they are great scientific material, is that the English language is not the same that can be understood by the audience for which it has been written, particularly the Western audience. The nuances of the words, the terminology used, and even where you place the comma and where you place the syntax, extremely important. And for that purpose, we in the Journal of Global Radiology, we had started what we called a scholar twinning program, in which first-rate research done badly written is linked up with somebody who is good in writing English language. And that makes those papers suitable for understanding by the Western English speaking editors, and they understand it better, and it is less work for them to make this paper capable for publication. So I would very strongly recommend that English language should be paid attention to. And I'm just want to make one comment before I stop. I was advising one of the major journals in Pakistan, one of the medical colleges, about maybe 10 years ago. And I told them that what they should do is to get an English speaking copy editor for the journal, and every article should be edited by an English-speaking copy editor, and there are many of those online, especially from the UK, so that the language can be corrected. And that, in fact, was probably, they said, was one of the best advices they received, and their journal went up in the acceptance as well as their impact factor, because now the Western audience were able to understand the writing and the contents of the writing, which they could not understand when it was written by non-English speaking Pakistani, Bangladeshis, or Vietnamese. Thank you.
Dr. Sarwat, can you kindly introduce yourself as well? That will be very helpful to the participants.
I'm Sarwat Hussain. I'm a young radiologist from K Medical College and a radiology professor of radiology here at University of Massachusetts, and written close to 200 publications, and ran this journal for the last 6-7 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarwat, Dr. Sarwat. So, Junaid, over to you. So,
yeah, so
please start
one
taking up the
question
questions.
was for the NPS of the Apple is 47. I was saying that 39 is good. So 47, Apple is at the is a very highly rated product. So I was talking about the service industry. So service industry like telephone and all of that. And education side as well, if you're doing remote programs, they have a very low NPS score. So I was referring to that. I have experience in that. I'm delivering already for a large organization. So we typically get 20 to 30 for online programs. If you're using theory, should we discuss in discussion? So I'm not sure what the question is, but let's say, I'm not sure about the question, but if it's about the description of the study, like how to relate to previous studies, you can definitely put that in discussion. Introduction section needs to be brief, 1.5 page, because it has to bring the reader or to your objective, and it has to be focused. So you don't spend too much time. Some people, including when I started writing, I also wrote a 8-page introduction to my thesis. Wrong idea. So you have to write an introduction in a way that it's easily digestible. If you have done like a review of it, you can put that in supplement or wherever you want to put, or create tables so that it's easier to follow. I just wish the attendees were visible in order to promote networking post-webinar, not for me. How are the references used? So I'm not sure how the question is asked, but each paper has a reference style that they need to follow, either Vancouver or APA style, and references are used. So some people try to reference everything. That's not a good idea. Reference the most important one, and do not reference paper from 1970s and 80s. Try to find something recent in the 5 or 10 years before, because there are times now that editors are looking for that whether this is a relevant topic. Some topics definitely would need you to go back to 70s and 80s. There it makes sense, because if a wrong idea in psychiatry was introduced in 17s and 80s and now someone wants to get back to that idea, that's fine. But try to get to the relatively recent.
Danish, Junaid, I think they're asking about how to enter the, like using how end notes or something like that. I think
yeah,
that's
so those are the specific tools. I didn't get the time to go through that. So EndNote, even Word document allows you to add the different references. Again, references alone would be a full workshop that how to properly do that. But if you go online and look for Vancouver references, at your level, if you're looking at the medical students and as a PG, if you're able to just have 20 to 30 references for your thesis written in a proper format, it will help you. EndNote is a proprietary software. They have made their online version available, but to teach you EndNote, it won't be possible now. But there are online videos that are available for you to teach you. I do recommend EndNote as a software. It's easier to use as compared to the other ones that I've used recently. Recording will be available. Doesn't the formatting depends on the journal requirement? So the paper manuscript, the way that manuscript is written from thesis to your the one that you submit, they require you to write in Times New Roman 12 double interline format. Many people don't follow that from the beginning. If you write that and then you can convert it to anything. If you start with writing the style as no spacing, if you want to introduce interline of 1.5 or 2, it will work out well. Please opt for clinical research case report session. It's not in my purview. Okay, so there's offer of the workshop. To find a good journal of your paper, look at the Chain Semantic website. How to get the trained software? Maybe they're looking for EndNote software. So EndNote version is available. It's I believe it's by Reuters, the same agency that gives you your news report. So they own the EndNote software. So you can go online, you can have it. There is a technique involved in which you can connect it to PubMed or Medline, which is a commonly common platform to get to the research paper. So you can just enter the paper that you want to get, and you can actually get the paper in it. And then once you have it, you can do that. Again, there's a technique involved that you need to do it. 45 minutes are not enough to cover everything.
Yeah, but one quick plugin is that EndNote has a very robust chat feature. Like if you are stuck with somewhere, because EndNote it makes your life very easy, but but if you're stuck somewhere, don't know how to use it, they do offer live chat support, and they're very good actually. Junaid, there is a question about group authorship. How do individual get credit, or how do a group of authors get credit? I think that's probably what Dr. Tahir
I'm
is
going to be
asking.
very frank. So in Pakistan, there is a trend that people want to be first author, especially the people in the academia faculty. I do recommend them to get to the last authorship, because last authorship means that you are supervising the work, give chances to the young people to become the first author. It encourages them, it incentivizes them. You can become a corresponding author onto that. So if you have a group authorship, just make sure that okay, so group authorship is separate, but I'm just started from there. So group authorship is acceptable in the Medline. So you can basically create a group and have it. I do not have much experience with the group authorship, but I've seen it a number of times that the groups are formed on a very big study that is expected to produce more than 10 or 20 papers. So then they basically collect the data and then make it available online. The data is live; it's already always being collected. So it basically allows you to have that. But again, don't have too much experience, but I would definitely say that to academia is to allow the young authors to become the first authors.
So, Dr. Junaid, wonderful, extremely engaging. We can see how the people are responding in the chat box. So this is one of the most engaging workshop, I must say that, and very judicious use of good technology and your command on the software. That's really impressive. So we have a comment from Dr. Umar Yad. Umar, can you please introduce and ask your question?
Thank you very much. I was thinking I don't have the right to ask the question. Still ask. So I have a pharmaceutical background and have used to be active in publications, but now it's more like writing the INDs, the NDAs, the briefing packages for regulatory bodies. Have not a chance to write the clinical reports, but have a chance to read the clinical reports. So what I will say is your presentation was very useful. And even the regulatory bodies, they have their guidelines, basically how to write up the INDs. And even they have gone to the point where they have the process, what they call it, they will validate your writing. I mean, they will not, big term word we use in our pharmaceutical word is refuse to file, which scares the people out of death. Because if you don't meet these certain criteria, the regulatory body will just refuse to file. And that's a big blow on the face of any company who would like to do the filing and getting the approval in time. So I will say it was very, very useful and very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. So I have a question about the friendly software. SPSS is the most friendly software to use, but I would definitely recommend to go for R, which is being mentioned also. It requires a little bit of coding. More tools are being developed that will run on top of R language, which is a statistical language or coding language. That will make it accessible. SPS is expensive. We do have lots of pirated version in Pakistan. They do work for timing, but try to learn R language. That should be your preference.
Thank you, Dr. Junaid. But we take this liberty really for your time, and there is a lot of interest which I have not seen in any of the past webinar, that people, they are looking for more and more. So taking this liberty, may I check with Sarfraz and you that it's just the planning phase, that maybe the APPNA Merit Research Committee can request to have some 2 hours more extended session on any of these topics, because the people, they are learning and the impact is really huge of such thing, because it was very engaging and people like this style, which is engaging and practical oriented. So I was just wondering if you can volunteer some more time in the future. We can have a little bit more extended session so that the people, they can learn more, and they can ask the direct question. That's one suggestion. And the second is, maybe we can create, as Dr. Sarwat Hussain mentioned, some mentoring or a mini mentoring, or some like a platform where the people, they can post their question, and the expert like you and Sarfraz, they can respond to it. So these are a couple of options. So we will discuss with the committee, the organizing committee, and discuss these ideas what we have collected. So from the impact purposes, this is extremely useful, and there is a wide ideas, like the postgraduate, like the undergraduate, and the people here in North America. I can see in the chat box people from North America all around. So they are very frankly sharing their views, their sentiments. So it was engaging, and we learned a lot, not only the pure science or the clinical research, but generally, how to make the webinar more productive, more impact creating. So that's really great. And the people, they are really requested for it very strongly, that they are looking for more elaborate session. So on the sideline, I will check with both of you. If you agree, then we can discuss with the merit committee that we can have a little longer session. With this, over to Dr. Sarfraz Hasni. Dr. Sarfraz, please do share some few words about yourself, because in a very quick, you just started. So that will be very good for the participant, because many of the participants, they have registered for the first time in this webinar. They were not here. So please give a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. Thank you so much, Dr. Zair. So my name is Sarfraz Hasni. I'm a rheumatologist by training, and I'm a physician scientist and clinical researcher at the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, Maryland. And my area of research is lupus, and that's what I do. And I've been involved in multiple publications, and I've been involved in this clinical research effort. So I think I will echo your words, what you just said, and I think we need to do this more formally with much longer sessions. And I'll be more than happy to partner up with Junaid and do this. So with this, I think we're a little over the time. So just would like to again thank Dr. Junaid Bhatti for doing an excellent webinar, which was very engaging and very useful. And also thanks to our panelists, Dr. Zair, Dr. Umar, Dr. All the other doctors. I think I'm missing some names. Dr. Sarwar, sorry. Dr. Sarwar was also there. So, and then all the people who joined in. So thank you so much. And I know there were tons of questions, and with the limitation in time, we were not able to get to every question. But inshallah, we will do a more extensive webinar, maybe more than one session, and we'll try to cover all of this. So again, with that, thank you, everyone. And inshallah, we'll meet everyone next Saturday, the same place, same time.
Thanks.
So,
bye.
Thank you.